Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad Doc Minis. I'm going back to where it all started for me on YouTube. My very first video was all about how to increase the size of your Terminators up to a Primaris standard. Well, that video is now officially obsolete. And whilst I'm a little bit sad about that, I am very, very happy with these new Primaris sized Terminators which we have finally gotten from Games Workshop in the Leviathan box set. In this video, I'm going to draw some key comparisons of scale with this miniature so you can get a realistic idea of how big and chunky these guys really are. So first up is a Legacy Terminator. It's the respectful thing to do. These guys have been around for a long time, and although this isn't the first Terminator ever released by a long shot, it does give you a clear idea of how much smaller they really are in comparison to the new miniatures range. It was a sorely needed upgrade, and this new Terminator definitely delivers. Less goofy proportions, chunkier legs, and just beautiful crisp detail, as you'd expect from a digital design process. A very good comparison, and a nod of respect to the old guy. Next up is a Primaris Intercessor. This is an important comparison. These are the rank and file soldiers of most Space Marine armies, and the Terminator does very well here. It conveys that sense of elite status along with a much chunkier frame, and it just looks different and more ancient somehow, which is entirely appropriate for these venerable warriors. Moving on, let's now compare against a Horus Heresy Mark VI Marine, a Beaky. Now these are a funny in-between size and scale, but I think this comparison works really, really well. I actually quite like my Terminators to tower above the regular Marines. So I think these miniatures would actually sit very nicely in a game of Horus Heresy. They look great. Now, since we've compared against a Beaky, we should really also compare against a plastic Mark III. Now, bearing in mind the Mark IIIs are getting a little bit older now, so it's an even bigger increase in size over the old miniature. Look at that. Quite astonishing, isn't it? Maybe even a little bit too much for my personal tastes. But if you wanted to field these two together, it would look okay. Next up, how about a regular human being? A Cadian. I've chosen a new Cadian as I want to keep this as current and as relevant as possible. And I love how the more dainty, realistic proportions of the Cadian really enhance the Terminator. Look how much bigger it is. This is exactly what a suit of Terminator armour should look like next to a regular human being. Excellent. A very, very good comparison. And although I don't like the uniforms on the new Cadians so much, I do like the realistic proportions and what they do for these comparisons. Next up, how about an Aggressor? This is kind of the Primaris equivalent, if you will, of a Terminator. And I think this is marvellous. So I've never really been a fan of Aggressors, which is why I've spent a lot of my YouTube career so far chopping them up. But I think the Terminator does well here. It no longer is dwarfed by the Aggressor. It actually looks somehow more impressive to me, but I'm probably being biased, to be fair. Yeah, a very good comparison. So moving on, I'm going to show you now how my Tortuga Bay Terminators compare against this modern GW Terminator. I think this is a pretty good comparison. You can see that the Tortuga Bay Terminator has slightly reduced head height in comparison to the GW Terminator. But overall pretty close, closer than I was expecting, quite frankly. So these guys, if you wanted to field them next to each other or indeed against each other, I think it would work quite well. I haven't risen anything up on the base here. This is all how they were meant to be built. What about my original conversion then? Here's one of my Wolfguard Terminators using my Aggressor Terminator hybrid mix. Now you can see here that obviously the new miniature is far superior. The legs, the exoskeleton, it's all ringing out loud here in this comparison. And while these conversions have served me well for a few years now, it's definitely showing how they're lacking, in my view. So I'm really, really pleased to get these new Terminators. So I'm happy with these, and as you've probably gathered, and I think they are a good starting point. Undoubtedly, we'll get a proper multi-part plastic kit at some stage, which will be brilliant. These are, in fact, monopose push-fit miniatures, in case you didn't know. But the poses are good. They're something you can easily mass. If you wanted to get a few more squads and just build them as is, they wouldn't look out of place next to each other, even though you'd be duplicating the poses. They're okay. There's nothing too dynamic there or too distracting. I really like that. I don't like fancy poses in my miniature, so I think these guys, you're going to see a lot of them where people get extra squads from places like eBay and that. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Please consider liking and sharing if you have, and if you're not already subscribed, consider giving us a sub. Take care. Thanks for watching.